What stocks should you buy for the next 10 years?
Is this business invulnerable to competition? Have deep-pocketed competitors taken a run at this business and failed?
You have said that your favorite time to own a stock is forever.
I've never sold a share of Berkshire, having bought the first shares in 1962.
If you have spent any time researching stocks, you have seen people discuss certain stocks as immortal and the keys to wealth. Oftentimes they are hailed as golden stocks, as the perfect investment for the future. These stocks can include Amazon, Google, Facebook, and a myriad of other huge companies that seem impenetrable. Yet, if you look at their trajectories today, you see a whole different perspective. So what happened? How come these indestructible companies are faltering? And what is the problem with these golden stocks? How does a stock garner the reputation as a permanent moneymaker? And what will happen to these golden stocks in the future? Well, the answer goes as far back as to the caveman days. The financial industry is completely unstable. That's just a fact. Oftentimes, factors completely out of our control dominate the sector today. For example, the war in Ukraine has caused supply chain shortages around the world that have drastically increased prices. This causes the pockets of many to now feel squeezed by something that was out of their control. This plays into the stock markets too. Think of how investors in Blockbuster must have reacted to their company continually making bad decision after bad decision. Think about those who shorted GameStop must have been surprised at the surge of Redditors who banded together and drove the price up out of their control. Uncertainty in the markets is a given, and that is something in conflict with human nature. Human beings are evolved to dislike uncertainty. In a prehistoric environment, humans had to be cautious around uncertain things. For example, snakes could be lurking in the bushes, alligators could be hiding under the water, and mosquitoes could give various diseases that they could not understand. As such, humans have strived to have as much control over their immediate surroundings as they could. This plays out into our modern world as well. Think about how many people, including maybe yourself, would rather pursue a lower risk, lower reward job instead of risking it all to become extremely successful in your field. This is not because you are inherently lazy, but instead just how humans are naturally wired. After all, the risk-reward in prehistoric societies was far more drastic than it even today is. The greatest thing you could do back in the days was kill a woolly mammoth, which, while impressive, is far less rewarding compared to the risk of losing the fight against the mammoth and dying. However, modern society allows for far more gains and success than any prehistoric person could ever imagine. To give you an example, the greatest person a caveman could ever meet in their entire lifetime was the chieftain of his tribe, who he often had conversations and interacted with. Meanwhile, modern people know about the existence of billionaires and political figures whom they'll never meet, interact with, or know on a personal level despite having their lives defined by them. Essentially, it is a scenario where the risk-reward is skewed in favor of the reward, which fights against human nature. Markets are one of the most honest measures of wealth and success there are. This is because a market is determined by people's actual wants and needs, rather than by an external force. For example, think of how musical trends change with the change in people's listening tastes. While you may disagree, the most popular music is popular because the most amount of people enjoy it. This is no different with stock markets. Stocks, by definition, are percentage ownerships of a company. If you own an Amazon share, you technically are an owner of the company. As such, the stocks are usually correlated with the health of a business. If people think a business will perform well in the future, they will invest in the company based upon the assumption that the stock price will rise as the business grows. This is the essence of investing as a whole. You buy an asset in order for someone in the future to think it is more valuable. than when you first bought it. That is true for stocks, real estate, gold, cryptocurrency, and all other financial assets. Yet, we cannot see the future. It is the uncertainty that the caveman in us is anxious of. So what do we do to understand the future better? Look to the past. Oftentimes, history is a great indicator of the trajectory forward. For example, in 1971, the US dollar was taken off the gold standard.
The strength of a nation's currency is based on the strength of that nation's economy. And the American economy is by far the strongest in the world. Accordingly, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators.
This effectively changed the currency forever. So how could a trader know exactly what would happen given this unprecedented change? Well, it was not the first time the gold standard had been tampered with. In 1933, FDR suspended the gold standard, so an investor in 1971 could have learned how to act from a currency devaluation simply by reading the past. Both times, asset prices soared initially after the gold standard was suspended. We can see this phenomenon today. As inflation continues to devalue the currency, we see asset prices rise similar to 1970 and 1930. History can often give us insight into situations we see today. Going back to golden stocks, these are often chosen based on history. For example, Apple is commonly touted as a stock to buy and hold forever. This is because Apple has a history of continual growth and stability. As such, investors, due to a human nature biased against anxiety, prefer it to newer, riskier investments since Apple has the history of growth. Understanding this history allows investors to have a clearer trajectory of where the future will head. After all, you cannot understand where you are today without understanding how you got here. History allows for more certainty of investing, which is amazing given an uncertain market. However, there is one hidden flaw with this historical method. History does not perfectly repeat. These golden stocks are often treated as golden based upon the history of the stock itself. Yet, often the circumstances that allowed for such historical events to occur are ignored. These historical events, however, are the key to understand what is going on. For example, Apple, the creator of the iPhone, saw a revolutionary success with their new product. Yet do you think they would have had the same impact on society if they were not the first to invent the iPhone? I cannot tell you this, and it is indicative of one thing. Apple has made revolutionary invention after revolutionary invention.
And boy, have we patented it.
Yet we cannot see if they will continue to innovate. Think of the last decade compared to decades prior. What life-changing revolution has Apple created compared to the iPhone, the Macintosh, iPod, iPad? The Apple Watch has not transformed society in the same way the iPhone has, and AirPods use technology that had already been in use. In essence, we don't know if Apple can keep up their golden streak. After all, the legend who made these products a reality is no longer with us. While it is not indicative of a stock rise or fall, it is indicative of the fact that we cannot assume Apple will innovate forever. When discussing stocks to hold forever, one common stock is Amazon. Amazon is a company that has a history of stable and continuous growth. Sounds nice, right? Well, it's important to look at the circumstances that allowed such a rise. Amazon was the first of its kind in an online business store. Sure, there were other alternatives, but none did what Amazon could. Now, Amazon is seen as an e-commerce behemoth. Yet, the business landscape is changing. Amazon's business saw a slowdown in growth as the pandemic slowed. It also has been under constant scrutiny by Washington, D.C., with the risk of being broken up, and now has to adjust back to a world where e-commerce has to compete with physical commerce. As such, the stock has fallen 30% in the last year. Now, Just reading history would have led you to conclude that the permanent rise of Amazon as a company was inevitable. Yet, a failure to acknowledge the current circumstances and potential future could have misled investors into thinking Amazon was perfect. While Amazon could recover, it is demonstrated that it is not the unstoppable giant we presumed it to be. This is true for every company. For example, take a look at the top 10 largest companies in 1980, 1990, 2000, 2010, and 2020. Notice how only one has remained over the entire period: ExxonMobil. Even Exxon has fluctuated from number 1 to number 10 this whole time, meaning it has not been perfectly stable. Of the companies listed here, these are the companies that no longer exist from the time period they could have been bought. For example, Lucent Technologies went bankrupt in 2006, hence why they are highlighted. These are the companies that have lost money since the time period they were bought in. For example, if you bought Alibaba in 2020, you would have lost money holding it now. And these are the companies that have been outpaced by the S&P 500 in the same period. You can see that outside of 2020, only 2 companies, Apple and Microsoft, have survived the test of time. This is indicative of one crucial point. Nothing in markets is stable. You can see the one company that has been on this list the whole time has been outpaced by the S&P 500 each time. Essentially, there is no company that is too big to fall, regardless of what the media tells you. So what will happen to these golden stocks in the future? Well, what is the one word I've been harping on this whole video? Uncertainty. We don't exactly know what will happen in the future. It is not my place to discuss my opinions of stocks as a whole, as this channel is not financial advice, and is why you should subscribe. With that being said, one thing I do know is that the companies should not be treated as permanent cash cows. Doing so will only hurt yourself, as the companies themselves have to answer to the real world. So take a lesson in this. Don't be anxious. Don't be fearful. Think logically, because there is nothing risk-free in life. You cannot avoid risk. Even the caveman had to make the risk of walking near the water full of alligators to be able to get a drink. Thank you so much for watching. These videos take a long time and a lot of effort, and if you could consider liking and subbing and commenting for the algorithm, I would really appreciate that. Thank you.